We were 2 months from the wedding. The final fittings were done, the guest list set, the hotel block reserved. He was everything I thought I wanted: charming, successful, devoted. And yet, underneath his devotion, there was something else, a need for control disguised as curiosity. Ever done something small to keep the peace, only to watch it burn everything down instead?
Subscribe.
Because this isn't about a test. It's about the answer none of us saw coming. He brought it up while we were drinking wine on the balcony, laughing about old stories. You know, Noah's always been a flirt, even back in college. But he's never crossed a line with anyone I was with. I smiled. That's good. He's your best friend.
Yeah, he is.
But he trailed off. Then he looked at me. Would you do something for me? Just see if he'd ever go there. See where his line is. I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. At first I refused. Of course I did. The idea was ridiculous.
Petty.
Cruel. But the more I resisted, the more he pushed, not forcefully, just persistently. You'd be doing it for us. For the future. To know who we can trust. It's harmless. Just a little flirt. No touch. No promises. I agreed. Not because I wanted to, but because I wanted him to stop asking. And somewhere deep down, I thought I'd prove his paranoia wrong. I had no idea what I was really about to uncover. It happened 2 days later. A party. Just friends. Noah was there, polished, clever, warm as always. He made me laugh, told stories that made me forget why I was talking to him in the first place. And when I leaned in just slightly, said something a little too complimentary, he didn't hesitate. He didn't flirt back. He didn't shut it down either. What he did, he looked at me and said something that cracked the ground beneath both of us. Does he know that I've been in love with you since the day he introduced us? I froze. The room didn't. The music kept playing, people kept laughing, glasses kept clinking. But inside me, something went still. What did you just say? I asked him, though I already knew. Noah looked down for a moment, ran his thumb over the rim of his glass, then met my eyes. You heard me. I had expected awkwardness. Maybe a joke. Maybe even a guilty look if he had flirted in return. But this was deeper than a reaction to a fake test. This was a history I never knew existed. Since when? I asked. Since the first dinner. You wore that navy sweater. You smiled at me like I mattered, and I knew I couldn't tell him. The way he said it, it wasn't performative. It was a quiet, exhausted confession. Like he'd carried it for years. He turned to leave, but I grabbed his wrist. Why are you saying this now? Because I've already lost, he said. Might as well lose honestly. And he walked out. I didn't tell my fiancé that night. I couldn't. Because for the first time, I wasn't sure who had failed the test. Me, for following through? Noah, for speaking a truth buried too long? Or him, for planting the idea in the first place? All I knew was that whatever trust had once existed among us, it had shifted, and there was no way to shift it back. The next morning, I got a message from Noah.
No apology. No plea.
Just one line. I wasn't going to say anything, but you asked me who I was. And suddenly, I couldn't look at my fiancé the same way, because maybe he already knew. I didn't sleep. I watched the ceiling morph from gray to light, listened to my phone buzz with silence, and rehearsed every possible version of the conversation I was about to have. By sunrise, I wasn't nervous. I was numb. And when he came through the door, all gym bag and confidence and iced coffee in hand, I sat on the edge of the couch and said it before I could lose courage. We need to talk. He smirked. That smug half-smile he always wore when he thought I was being dramatic. He thought this was about centerpieces or in-laws. He didn't know I was holding a scalpel. I did it, I said.
The test.
like you asked. The smile dropped. What did he do? He asked, trying too hard to sound casual. He told me he's been in love with me. Since the beginning. He blinked.
Once. Twice.
Then turned away, dragging a hand through his hair. Damn it, Noah, he muttered. I knew it. But there was no surprise in his voice. Just annoyance. And that's when the truth started leaking through the cracks. You knew, I said.
He looked at me.
No denial. Just the faintest trace of guilt. He told me once. After he met you. Said he'd back off. Said he'd never cross a line. So, why make me test him? He didn't answer. Why put me in that position if you already knew how he felt? Silence. And then, because I needed to see if you'd tell me the truth. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about Noah.
It was about me.
You didn't trust me, I said. I needed to know you'd choose me, he snapped. And there it was, laid bare between us. This wasn't about trust. It was about control. Ownership. Making sure I passed his game on his terms. But he didn't count on one thing. I passed the test. And I no longer wanted the prize. We didn't cancel the wedding. Not right away. The venue was still booked. The guests still had their flights. My dress still hung in the back closet like a question I was too afraid to answer. And he acted as if nothing had changed. He called it a rough patch. A misunderstanding. Said we should take a weekend to recenter. But I had already shifted. Once someone shows you they don't trust you, they can never unshow it. You can explain it, justify it, apologize for it, but it stays like rot beneath paint. Beautiful from a distance. Unlivable up close. I saw Noah again. It wasn't planned. I ran into him at a bookstore of all places. Hood up, posture low, eyes darting like someone who'd been carrying a weight too long. He didn't greet me. Just handed me a small paperback, dog-eared and worn. Inside the cover, he'd written, "For when you realize love doesn't mean being tested. It means being believed." Noah, that was the moment I knew. Not that I wanted Noah, but that I could never marry a man who needed to see me break before he could trust me whole. I called the wedding off 4 days later. No drama. No screaming. Just a quiet message to the guests, a refunded deposit, and a return label for the dress. He was stunned. Furious, even. You're throwing everything away over what? A stupid idea I had? No, I said. I'm walking away because you couldn't love me without proof. And because you couldn't handle the fact that the man you didn't trust saw me clearer than you ever did. I didn't speak to either of them for months. He texted a few times, half apologies, backhanded regrets dressed as love. I miss us. We could have been great. You overreacted. But I didn't answer. Because the silence said more than I ever could. Noah didn't reach out at all. Not until a full year had passed, and I saw him again by coincidence, this time at a small gallery opening across town. He looked different. Tired, maybe.
Softer.
Like someone who had finally stopped trying to win people who never truly saw him. We talked. Not about the past. Not about the wedding. Just about books. Music.
Coffee.
The weather. And yet, something about it felt more honest than every vow I had once rehearsed. He never said, "I told you so." He never asked, "What if?" Instead, as we stood by the door, ready to leave, he looked at me and said, "You chose yourself. That's rare. I hope you keep doing it." And I knew in that moment he wasn't the prize either. I was. I didn't marry the man who made me prove my worth. And I didn't run to the one who waited in the wings. I stayed alone. Not lonely, just whole. Because once you've passed someone else's test, you stop living for their score. You start writing your own results. And mine? Freedom.
Clarity. Power.
If you've ever been tested, cornered, or doubted by the one who claimed to love you, remember this. You don't have to prove your worth. You just have to protect it. Subscribe for more stories that don't end with revenge, but with becoming someone they never get to test again.